Alcaraz and Juan Carlos Ferrero split up, and
we got two major splits within the sport. Tennis, man. There's no other sport like it.
December 31st, 2025. Alcaraz opens Instagram and posts his year-end recap captioned, "My Real 2025." 20 photos covering a season that produced 8 titles and a year-end world number 1 ranking. The man who coached him to every single one of those titles, 7 years, 6 Grand Slams, the greatest coach-player partnership men's tennis had seen in a decade, is not in a single frame. Completely erased from the entire visual record of a year they constructed side by side. The tennis world didn't just notice, it fractured over it. Fans who had celebrated that partnership for years suddenly found themselves questioning everything they thought they understood about what was happening inside that camp. Here is the part that should genuinely disturb you, though. The reason Alcaraz felt comfortable enough to publicly erase Ferrero from his 2025 highlights had nothing to do with a contract. The headlines focused on the 48-hour ultimatum.
I guess got emotional at the end because we didn't want to travel.
The unsigned papers, the negotiation that collapsed in
Juan Carlos Ferrero talking about a little bit more details behind the scenes.
2 days. But that was never the real story. A tennis expert finally reveals why. And the answer points directly at something that had been quietly dismantling that partnership from the inside long before December. Not a professional disagreement, something far more personal than that. What was happening inside that team will reframe everything you thought you knew about this split.
Carlos Alcaraz announcing his split with longtime coach Juan Carlos Ferrero.
Subscribe right now, because this is the part of the story nobody told you. Here is the full breakdown. When the split became public on December 16, 2025, every outlet reached for the same explanation. The contract dispute dominated everything, specifically the 48-hour ultimatum that ended with papers left unsigned. And on the surface, those details were real. Javier de Diego of Radio Nacional España confirmed that the relationship collapsed specifically during contract negotiations 2 days before the announcement. A source close to Ferrero told Clay Tennis the full sequence. The annual contract expired at the end of November. Alcaraz's camp waited until December 13th to present a new one, and Ferrero was given until the morning of December 15th to sign it. He rejected it. The camp refused to make any changes. Within 24 hours, the partnership was over. That is what happened mechanically. But mechanics are not reasons. The contract was the trigger, not the cause. And the difference between those two things is everything when it comes to understanding why Alcaraz felt comfortable enough to post "My Real 2025" on December 31st and erase Ferrero from 20 photos covering a season they built together. Ferrero himself made this distinction in his Marca interview. He said money was explicitly not the issue, and he had already planned the entire 2026 preseason and Australian Open schedule before the split happened, which means he genuinely believed the partnership was continuing. The friction, he said, was over non-sporting clauses and the professional direction of Alcaraz's career. He added that some of those issues might have been resolved if both sides had sat down properly. But that conversation never happened. The question nobody properly answered was why that conversation never happened. And that is where the real story begins. September 2025. The partnership was still publicly intact. Alcaraz was deep into his season, Ferrero was in his coaching box, and nothing visible suggested December was coming. That is when Fernando Meligeni, a former Brazilian professional who shared the circuit with Ferrero for years and understood his personality and working style at a level most analysts simply do not, sat down with Clay Tennis and gave an interview that now reads like a precise diagnosis of everything that followed. Meligeni was asked about Alcaraz's Netflix documentary, My Way, and what it revealed about the player's philosophy. His answer went far beyond the surface. He said that My Way represented something much larger than Alcaraz's declared preference for enjoyment. It was a statement about scheduling, commitment level, and the degree to which the family would be involved in the operation of his career. He was direct about who had won the internal battle inside that team. His exact words, "It was won by my way, and today you have the kid, you have the father." That one observation, delivered 3 months before the split, 3 months before the erased post, 3 months before any contract conversation became public, finally reveals the fault line that the contract story obscured. This was never about paperwork. It was about who was actually running Carlos Alcaraz's career. And by September 2025, Meligeni could already see the answer clearly. Tony Nadal, speaking to Onda Cero Radio 2 days after the split announcement, arrived at the same conclusion from a different direction. He said the reason for the split goes beyond tennis and added, "I don't think it was a tennis issue because tennis-wise, Alcaraz has to be satisfied with the work Juan Carlos has been doing all this time." When the man who coached Rafael Nadal for most of his career tells you a coaching split has nothing to do with tennis, that observation carries significant weight. He was pointing at the same thing Meligeni had identified, the dynamics operating beneath the professional surface of that partnership. A source close to Alcaraz's years of success told Clay Tennis and RG Media that there were significant disagreements between Ferrero and Alcaraz's father about how to manage the player's career. That sentence is doing enormous work. It is not describing a single argument. It is describing a sustained power struggle between a world-class professional coach and the father of the player he was coaching. A struggle over scheduling, training base, team composition, and the fundamental question of whose vision for Carlos Alcaraz's career would ultimately prevail. The earliest documented flashpoint came in February 2023. Ferrero announced he would not travel on the South American tour and delegated that responsibility to Antonio Martinez Cascales. Alcaraz's father reacted with a heated argument. The player went on to win in Buenos Aires and reach the final in Rio without Ferrero present, which from the father's perspective likely reinforced his belief that the family's involvement was not just acceptable but sufficient. From Ferrero's perspective, the argument left a mark that never fully healed. What followed over the next 2 years was a gradual but consistent shift in the internal balance of that team. Alcaraz's father had been building and promoting the Carlos Alcaraz Academy in El Palmar, Murcia, roughly 60 miles from Ferrero's Equilite Academy in Villena, where Alcaraz had spent his formative years. The push to move Alcaraz's training operations toward the family-run El Palmar base and away from Villena was a slow but sustained pressure on Ferrero's professional authority. By the time the contract negotiation arrived in December 2025, Ferrero was not simply being asked to sign a new deal. He was being asked to accept a set of non-sporting terms that reflected how much the balance of power inside that team had already shifted away from him. He did not accept it. And given everything that had been building since 2023, that outcome was far less surprising than the headlines suggested. Ferrero was described by those who knew him on circuit as carrying what Clay Tennis called Scandinavian sobriety, a disciplined, structured, professionally exacting approach to the job that was fundamentally at odds with the culture Alcaraz was building around himself. When asked in 2024 what Alcaraz needed to improve off the court, Ferrero said, "Understanding professionalism, when to really work, when to rest, when to be focused." That answer, delivered publicly, was quietly significant. A coach does not say that about a player who is already doing those things. Meligeni went further in September. He identified nightlife, scheduling, and how deeply the family was embedded in daily operations as symptoms of the same root issue: commitment level and who had the authority to define it. Ferrero's sobriety and Alcaraz's exuberance had coexisted productively for years because results were coming. But the Netflix documentary made something visible that had previously been private. It showed Alcaraz explaining his philosophy of tennis and life in a way that left little room for the kind of structured off-court discipline Ferrero had always pushed for. By the time Ferrero and Samuel Lopez were jointly named 2025 ATP Coaches of the Year on December 11th, just 6 days before the split announcement, the partnership was already over in everything but paperwork. Lopez had joined the team in December 2024 specifically to ease the burden of travel on Ferrero. In hindsight, his arrival also provided Alcaraz's camp with a ready-made replacement who already knew the system, already had the players' trust, and required no transition period whatsoever. Ferrero's public response to the December 31st Instagram post was measured. He said it surprised him because he had been an integral part of 2025. But measured public responses and private emotional states are rarely the same thing. And what happened after the Australian Open confirmed the gap between the two. Alcaraz arrived in Melbourne as the world #1 without Ferrero in his box for the first time in 7 years. He won the title, completed the career Grand Slam at 22, the youngest man in the Open era to achieve it. Throughout the entire tournament, he did not acknowledge Ferrero in any interview or celebration. The man who had built the foundation for that achievement received no public recognition at the moment it was completed. Shortly after Melbourne, Ferrero removed Alcaraz from his Instagram follows. He unfollowed the fitness trainer and physiotherapist from the former setup as well. The only member of the old team he kept following was Lopez. Ferrero told Cope, "It's too recent for me to watch the match and see the whole team. It makes you a bit melancholic and sad to see them all there and relive what happened." That was not the response of someone who had simply moved on professionally. It was the response of someone processing a personal wound dressed up as a professional disagreement. Ferrero had given 7 years, 6 Grand Slams, and by his own account poured his soul into a project, and watched the person he built walk away from him publicly, post 20 photos of the year they spent together without including him once, win the one title they never won together, and say nothing. The erase was not an accident, it was a conclusion. If this breakdown shifted how you understand what actually happened between Alcaraz and Ferrero, that is exactly what this channel is built to do. We do not just report what happened, we dig into why it happened, and what it actually means for the sport going forward. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you are here for the next one. And drop your take in the comments. Was Ferrero pushed out by the family, or did the partnership simply run its natural course? The debate is worth having, and we read every comment that comes in.